The technique we used was to put the animal in a small chamber and record its temperature and its metabolic rate as we stimulated the brain's thermostat. Unlike our experiments on many other mammals, the kangaroo rat experiments yielded terrible data. Responses were all over the place. Nothing made sense. It occurred to me that maybe we should watch the animal to gain some insight as to why it was behaving so poorly in comparison to other species. So we put a see-through plexiglass lid on the chamber, and we watched the animals as we did the experiments. The answer to the problem was immediately obvious. When the animal was awake, the responses were high. When the animal was asleep, the responses were lower, and sometimes during sleep, the responses disappeared altogether. Now, this problem turned out to be an opportunity. Our kangaroo rats would not stay awake. This intrigued me. In fact, it intrigued me so much that I wanted to find out what changed in the kangaroo rats when they were asleep. I wanted to know how and why sleep could have such a dramatic physiological impact on an animal. And you know what? I've been studying sleep ever since. It is true, sleep is an immensely interesting thing to study. But beyond the intrinsic fascination of the subject, there's a much more significant reason why you should engage yourself in our course. It could save your life. Now, that may sound like an exaggeration, but it's not. Let me explain why. In the absence of disease, there are three basic components of a healthy lifestyle: nutrition, physical fitness, and sleep. In comparison to a lack of exercise and nutrition, however, sleep deficits lead to serious consequences much more rapidly. The health consequences of being a couch potato take years to develop, and a person can go days without food. The frail Mahatma Gandhi once fasted for 21 days in his effort to quell sectarian violence in India. No one has gone without sleep for 21 days. In fact, the record is 11 days. In contrast, a day of sleep deprivation or several days of inadequate sleep produce consequences that can be life-threatening. Lack of sleep has effects on mood, on cognitive performance, and on energy levels. But the serious issue is that the sleepy person is extremely vulnerable to falling asleep under any circumstances. Now, this is not a problem if you're in front of the TV, but if you mix sleepiness with driving or operating machinery, the result is a very high incidence of injury, death, and disaster. Yet, college students think nothing of pulling an all-nighter. And in our 24/7 society, short sleep is a common practice. What is it about sleep that makes these practices so dangerous? The main fact that you have to understand is that sleep is homeostatically regulated. That's a big word. We'll come back to this concept of homeostatic regulation later. But basically, what it means is that if you do not get the requisite amount of sleep, you develop a sleep debt. And when you develop a sleep debt, your brain works very hard to force you to pay that debt back. Furthermore, like credit card debt, the sleep debt is cumulative. You may cut back on sleep a little bit on certain days and think that you can handle it. And maybe you can with the help of a little coffee, but that little sleep debt does not magically go away. Small sleep debts accumulate into large sleep debts that you eventually have to pay back, whether you want to or not. A seriously thirsty person can refuse a glass of water. A seriously hungry person can refuse to eat. But a sleep debt inevitably results in falling asleep regardless of the circumstances, even exceedingly dangerous ones. Let me give you a real-life example. I want to read to you part of an email from a student that was sent to my colleague at Stanford, Dr. Bill Dement. I will tell you much more about Bill Dement in later lectures. He is the father of sleep medicine in this country, but he is also a leader in sleep education. At Stanford, he has given a very popular course on sleep and dreams that is taken each year by hundreds of undergraduates. This email comes from a student who had taken that course.